do here. A little more punctual tonight. Last week, I know I was pretty late, over a half hour, I think. So let me just get over here and see who we have here. I've got a couple of people here, not too many yet, but we'll give some time and we'll see who actually shows up here tonight. I know it's Mother's Day, so we may not have too many here tonight. But I see Robinson. Oh, you're first online tonight. Lon, I see you're in here. Gerald, you're second from the Deep South. Robinson Auto, no rust, man. I could actually only dream of that here. I wish that's all I could dream about was no rust up here. But unfortunately, just about everything we do up here is solid rust. I do have a couple of emails from people. I'm going to address one of them tonight. It was one of my subscribers who's actually, I think it was a Honda or it's a Hyundai that they're actually doing. They're trying to get the rear rotors off of the vehicle, and they're pounding the heck out of it trying to get it off, and they just can't get it off. I did see that email from my subscriber about maybe 2 or 3 hours ago. So I did send her an email saying to stop by and that we would discuss it tonight. Hopefully, I think her name is Valerie. I hope she stops by. And Valerie, if you do show up here, send me a message here so I know you're here watching. And, I do have you on the list as the first question, but if you're not here, we're still going to go ahead with it anyway. But we'll give it a little time for you to get here, and we'll see what's going on. So hopefully everybody had a good weekend. I know it's Mother's Day today, and, I guess it's a special day for a lot of people out there, and everybody has a mother, as you know. But all right, so I just want to wish all the mothers out there a happy Mother's Day. Today is our 10th Jimthecarguy shop talk, live on Sunday nights. I was hoping that it would pick up and get a little bit busier on here, but we'll see how it goes. Right now, we only have about 18 people here, so I'm assuming that tonight's probably going to be a slow night because a lot of people have more important things to do than to come here and shoot the breeze with us here. All right. Let's see what we got going on here. Who do we have here now? We have Robinson Auto. We have Gerald here. We have Lon, John A. Clark, Big Dog 50001 is here. Manuel from the South also. Jeffrey Wolf says hi. Gerald, we moved that a long time ago. Lon. All right, let's see what we got going on here. Robinson Autos in PA. I remember I made that mistake once before. I thought you were down in the Carolinas, and you straightened me out. McGee 63. I know where you're from. Actually, we're going to talk about something today that you might be a little bit familiar with. I'm going to go back to back in the day when I used to have a gas station in Bayonne. I used to have a gas station on 53rd and Kennedy Boulevard. One of my subscribers sent me an email and was asking me some questions about how long I've been in the business, where I got started. We talked back and forth, and they had a couple of more questions for me. So I said I would do a discussion about it tonight, how I got started. And, this was 42, 43 years ago, 1976 to be exact. So it's been a long time, but how I got started and how I progressed up from at the gas station into just a regular repair shop. So, we'll talk about that tonight as well. I do want to warn you of this, though. My 2 dogs are right here sleeping on the floor. When Mrs. Jimthecarguy comes home shortly, I know they're going to go berserk. So if you hear my dogs going crazy, there's nothing going on. It's just Mrs. Jimthecarguy coming back home. Just so you know. All right? I didn't want you to think anybody's going to cause my dogs any grief here. Nothing to worry about. Joe's Auto Electric. Hi, how you doing tonight? Hope everything is well with you. How did I miss the opening anyway? It's shop talk time. That's right. And I do have something we're going to talk about. It's, I think it's Jesnet. I'm not really sure if I'm saying that correctly, but we're going to talk about it. I do have something in my notes over here that I told you we would talk about tonight, and we are. You're my third question that we're going to respond to. We got Lon here. We got McGee, Lon. Okay. That's why I'm a cat guy. Actually, believe it or not, and you probably know this anyway, that the cats rule the house. Even though I got 2 dogs, I also have a cat, and the cat rules the house. You know, the cat walks past the dogs and just looks at them, and they know that she's in charge of the house. All right, so let's go and get to a couple of things. Anybody with car-related questions, send me an email here or just type it in, and we'll talk about it. Baggett and Leggett is here. There's a garage. It's in the AM. Okay. Cats rule the house. It's the house. No. Okay. All right. We're going to talk about a couple things. This is the first thing that somebody wanted to talk about. They asked me about, specifically, they asked me how I got started. And when I got started, I worked for a fella after I got out of, let me just back up a little bit. When I was in school, I worked for a garage up in Jersey City, and McGee 63, I'll know where this place is. It was on Thorn Street and Kennedy Boulevard. There used to be a Gulf station up there, and I worked at that gas station. I used to have a job before that, but I couldn't take working indoors all the time. I wanted to be outside, and plus I wanted to work on cars. So I got an opportunity. An uncle of mine was friends with this guy in a gas station, and he got me a job to pump gas at this guy's gas station. So once I started pumping gas there, the guy saw that I was pretty knowledgeable of what I could do. And at that point, I didn't really know anything about cars, but I was a mechanical kind of guy because I could fix just about anything I touched. Back when I was a kid, I used to fix all the bicycles for all the kids on the block. If somebody had a broken bicycle, they'd bring it to me and I'd fix it for them. And that's how I got started fixing things. And to this day, I still work on cars for people that grew up with me when I was, as a kid. But getting back to what happened is I worked for the Gulf station. When I worked for this guy in the Gulf station, I used to pump the gas and I would fix the tires and do the minor little things. Back in those days, a gas attendant wasn't just a gas attendant. A gas attendant back then, they used to, of course, pump gas. They would change the oil in cars. They would fix flat tires, jack the car up, take the tire off, plug the tires, which is what we did back in those days. And after we plugged the tires, put them back on, and he would the guy who owned the place would give me little jobs to do. Like he would tell me, we have this off. We're going to change the brakes on it, pull this apart. And when you get this apart, let me know, and I'll put it back together. So I didn't know much about cars at that point. So I would take the cars apart, and then he would come over and he'd put them all back together again. I will say this, we're going to get back to some of this chat over here in just a minute, but I just want to finish this story and then we'll come back over and we'll answer a couple of questions over here. So that's how I got started. And I used to do brake jobs, I used to do tires, I used to do any kind of minor repair work. And back in those days, we used to have cars. You used to get like 30, 40,000, 50,000 miles on them. You used to burn valves like crazy. So when you burned a valve, it was a fairly easy job. You would actually pull off the valve covers and take off the heads off the vehicle. Sounds complicated. Back then, it wasn't nothing like it is today. Back then, we used to you basically took the intake manifold off, dropped the exhaust pipes, not the pipes, but the manifolds. You would separate them from the heads, push it out to the one side and drop it down, push it out the other side and drop it down, take the intake manifold off, pull the rocker arms out, take the bolts out of the head, which you used to shoot them out with an air gun. Everything was steel back then. So we'd shoot everything out with the air gun. And once we shot it out with the air gun, I would pull the heads off. So when I'm at my shift used to start after school. So I would start at 4 o'clock and I'd work until 11. So during that time period, I'd be pumping gas and pulling the cars apart. Then he didn't let me put them back together, but I used to pull them apart all the time. So once I got pretty proficient at taking them apart, then he actually let me start to put them back together. So that's how I got started pulling the engines apart. And to this day, I can probably close my eyes and pull a Chevy apart without even blinking an eyelash, because I've done so many of them. but that's how I got started doing the work for this fella here. And I did the valves. I used to do the heads. I used to do any kind of water pumps or radiators, anything like that. And then when I got out of school and I graduated, now during school I was actually in a mechanics class too, so I learned a lot of mechanics while I was in school. 2 periods a day I used to have mechanical, auto mechanics, so I learned a lot there as well. So I was able to do a lot of stuff. Once I got out of school, he asked me to come on full time and work for him full time, which I did, and I worked for him for probably about a year. And then we got into a discussion about money one day, and he wasn't giving me the money I thought I should be earning. And I might add, back in those days, it was like $2 or $3 an hour, whatever it was. It was real cheap. So, I wasn't getting what I could get. So I searched around and I found another shop, and it was a small little one-bay garage. And what I did is I went to work for this guy here, and I worked for him for probably about maybe 6 months. And the guy had no mechanical knowledge whatsoever. He knew nothing about cars. He thought he knew a lot, but he didn't. He used to screw people like crazy. And I remember looking at this guy saying, this guy can own a gas station and do the repair work and make a living and pay his bills and have everything he has. If he can do it, I can do it. So I decided at that point that I was going to go and buy my own shop and, start my own business. So I searched around a couple of different places, and I think it was back in right after, about a year after I got out of high school, I found a shop, and it was down in Bayonne. It was on 53rd and Kennedy. It was an Exxon station, and it was run down. The guy who owned the place was in poor health, so there really wasn't a lot of people who had anything good to say about the guy. So I wound up, we made a deal. I bought the shop, and then from there, I was at the gas station. I stayed there for 17 years at the gas station. I left the gas station after 17 years because I couldn't take the minimum wage employees that worked for me. We're going to get back to that subject in a second. Minimum wage employees that worked for me during the pump and gas. Well, I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to write myself a note, and we're going to come back to this because I do want to talk about this. Okay, Okay, I will come back to that, and we'll talk about that. You're not going to believe some of these stories. You wouldn't believe it. So, and some of them are going to have to be very delicate when I tell them because they're really not appropriate to be saying on live chat like this, but I'll be very discreet about it, and hopefully you'll get the gist of what I'm saying. But anyhow, I decided at that point I want to get out of the gas station business because of employee theft, and I had a gas station, and in the first 10 years I was there, I wasn't robbed at all. The last 7 years I was there, I was robbed 13 times. Inside of 1 month, I was robbed twice not me, but people that worked for me got robbed twice by the same guy and got away both times. Well, the second time he got caught, and only through stupidity did he get caught. We will talk about that one too. I'll come back to that. I want to finish my other story. I'm just writing this down so I don't forget to talk about this too. The stupidity of some people. All right. Anyhow, he came back and he robbed me. What do we got here? Thank you very much. I think your picture looks familiar. I think I did talk to you recently. I think you had, if I'm not mistaken, Madly 52, I believe, and you could correct me if I'm wrong. I think you had a Honda you're doing brakes on. You got a price from the dealer of almost $700, and I think that you did the repair yourself for $65 a set or something like that. So I'm happy if it's you. I'm happy to help you out. Just send me an email or just let me know if that really was you. I'm pretty sure because I have my notes over here. I was going to talk about it, but thank you. Okay. Sorry, I got distracted. What was I up to? The gas station. So I decided I was going to get out of the gas station, and I decided I was going to leave because I didn't want the employee theft. Exxon is a horrible company to deal with because all they care about, and exactly what they said to me, is they said to me one time, well, profits is the name of the game, and they were screwing the daylights out of me with the rent. Back then, that was, let me just think, it was 76 when I took it over. By the time I left, it was 17 years later. When I left there, after being with them 17 years, my gas station was only 100 by 100. I used to pump a lot of gas, but my rent was over 10 grand a month. And that was back 23 years ago. So that's a lot of money. That the Exxon really nailed me. So I said, enough of this. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not going to rent the property from anybody. I'm going to buy it myself. So what I did is I got out of the Exxon station. I couldn't find a shop any place around. I wanted to stay close to the Uptown Bayonne area where my shop was located. Like I said, it was on 53rd and Kennedy. I wanted to stay close to that area there. So what I did is I actually, while I was searching around, I rented a shop on 51st and Kennedy Boulevard. Now, my gas station was two bays that I could work on cars. The other shop that I rented, it was actually 5 bays where I could get I could fit 3 deep on one side, 3 deep on the, so 7 cars I could fit in there. I never got 7 cars into the building because I never wanted to get in, line them up in a row like that. So I used to have 5 cars in there at a time to work on, which I found myself doing all the horrible things that really no mechanic likes to do. Rear ends, differentials, all the back breaking stuff that destroys your body, destroys your shoulders, destroys your hands, destroys your knees, your back. It creates a lot of problems. So I was doing a lot of that stuff just to pay the bills because I had me and I had 3 other mechanics working for me. I had a tow truck at the same time. So I needed to keep the business flowing to pay the bills. Once I found the shop that I'm in right now, it was not far away. It's actually on the corner of 49th and Broadway. So at that point, from 53rd to 49th, only a couple of blocks, it's a good deal. Let me just see here really. Toyota. Okay. All right. Okay. I get so many emails. I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was a Toyota. Okay. So I went to 49th and Broadway, and on 49th and Broadway, it was a shop basically that you could get the cars in, fix them, and get them out. It was no such thing as like a lot of shops where cars come in and they just die inside the shop. My shop, it was me. And at that point, I got rid of my tow truck. I sold my tow truck. I didn't want to do towing any longer. I had a flatbed tow truck. So, it kept me pretty busy with that. But I got rid of that truck there, got rid of it. And it was just in the shop. It was me, 2 other mechanics, and 1 helper. I used to do a lot of commercial business. So the commercial business used to keep me busy. We used to pick up the commercial vehicle. So I needed 2 guys to go and pick up the vehicle, shoot down, pick it up, do the job, and then drop it back off. Now, it was a rental car company that I was doing a lot of work for, so they gave me a lot of business. So what I used to do was pick up the 1 car, bring it down, do whatever we had to do, send my 1 guy back, and all day long they would just rotate cars, rotate them out, bring 1 in, give it back to them, bring another 1 down, and that's how we started doing a lot of the in and out work. At that point, I realized that for me, doing the engine work, the transmission work, or anything like that was not really a good idea because if I jammed up my shop, if I'm doing a valve job or doing heads on a car and I lose a bay, granted, you're making money on those kind of jobs, but you're tying up a lot of time on it I had so much work with regular maintenance, tune-ups, tires, batteries, shocks, struts, all the basic maintenance in and out the same day. So I decided at that point I was not going to do any more of the heavy backbreaking work that I did for years. So probably 20 years ago, I stopped doing the transmissions, the differentials. I used to sub out the transmissions because my brother works in a transmission shop not far away. So I'd send everything over to them and they would do the transmissions for me. And that was probably about 20 years ago. I still used to do the valve jobs and the timing belts and all the stuff like that. But those, I used to do them where I get them in and out inside of like 2 days. I get them in and out because you tear them down one day, you put it back together next out the door. Only when the quality and the machine work started to deteriorate, where you had trouble with the machine work that was being done. Like one time we had done an engine in the car and it was actually a good quality company. I'm not going to mention any names, but a lot of you guys, if I told you what company it was, you would be amazed. But anyhow, the company is still in business, so I'm not going to badmouth anybody, but I put an engine in the car, put it in, and when I changed the engine, I changed everything. I changed the engine, I changed the water pump, I changed the radiator, I changed everything that could possibly cause that engine to fail in the future. I changed it. New water pump, new radiator, new hoses, everything brand new. Well, I send this 1 car out, and to this day, the guy's still my customer, but he gets a car, he takes off, and he calls me up from a couple of miles away. He says to me, the car's running horrible. Is it popping and spitting and everything? And, I can't even drive the car. So I send the tow truck down, I get it back, I bring it back to the shop, I check it over. As it turns out, one of the cylinders was dead, had zero compression in it, no compression whatsoever. What happened is, after a long story short of going through the process back then, we pulled it all apart to find out that one of the valves had stuck in the down position when they machined the engine. I guess somebody didn't do their job correctly. The valve stayed the down position. The piston came up, hit the valve, and bent the valve. And it was a timing chain on it, so there was no way that the timing belt could have slipped. But it actually had bent the valve in the engine, and it was no good. So we wound up having to do that all over again. So, that's when I stopped doing the engine work, because we got paid once for it. We did the job twice. So, even though they tell you that they'll pay you the labor they pay you is pennies compared to what you're actually making. So that's why I stopped doing the engine work. And then later on after that, I used to deal with this regular machine shop. And this machine shop I think it was third generation actually. And they were in Jersey City, and McGee 63 will know where this is. It was right on the lower part of Jersey City, close to Bayonne. It was a machine shop over there. And I get a car, send the heads down, gets the heads back to me. I put the job back together. Not my guys, put it all back together, start the car, and there was a GM too. Start the car up, the car's running in my shop. I got the hoses on the back, it's running, and I'm just watching the car warm up. And all of a sudden I see a little bit of it's normal you get a little bit of smoke, but this smoke was a little bit more than normal. And I look underneath there, and there's a slight little wisp of antifreeze down by sort of where the plug area would be in between the manifold right there. So I looked at that and I thought, maybe I just spilled a little antifreeze or whatever. So I shot it out with the air gun. I sprayed it down and I cleaned it all off. Start the car up, and the same thing. I see that little bit of antifreeze coming out of it again. So I shut the car off. I pressure tested, put the pump on, I pump it up. Sure enough, there's a crack in the head. The head was cracked. I called the guy up. I said, Johnny, I said, what's going on? I said, don't you check these heads out before you machine them? And I told him what was going on about the leak and everything. And he says, to be honest with you, he says, I don't even do the heads here anymore. He says, cheaper for me to buy them at a place in Florida and have them shipped up to me than to pay a guy to have him do all the machine work on it. I said, yeah, but now I get screwed. Now this job's supposed to be done. I got to tear it apart and do the whole thing all over a second time for free. So he says to me, I'll make it up to you on the next time. There was no next time. I stopped at that point. I said, and believe me, it wasn't the first time. This was like the last time that I said, that's it. Enough is enough. I'm not doing this anymore. Because the quality of work was horrible. I've had trouble with the guy for like 3 or 4 times on other things he did. And I said, that's it. Could I have shopped around to find another machine shop? I probably could have, but I had so much work going on. I didn't need this type of heavy work to tie my shop up. So at that point, I decided this was the last car I was ever going to do a valve job on. And that's what I did. From that point on, if it was a valve job that needed to be done, I used to sub it out to a friend of mine. I would tell my customer, I don't do it here, but I can send it to a guy and he'll take good care of you and stand behind it. And to this day, that's what I do. I sub out the valve jobs. I don't do them. Transmissions goes to my brother's place, and the any kind of major engines or valve jobs or anything like that goes to this other guy here that I know, also in Bayonne. So that's it. That's pretty much how I got, to where I am today, 42 years later, 17 years at the Exxon, 3 years on 51st, and about 22, 23 years where I am presently. Okay. Now I'm going to get into some of this talk over here. I apologize because I'm kind of ignoring everybody over here, but I am going to get back to that. But I do want to talk about this. Remember I said to you, all the problems I had with the gas pumpers. It was the last couple of years I was there, it was horrible. The kids are robbing you blind. The gas pumpers, they're robbing you blind. Who doesn't show up? It's snowing out. They don't want to come in. It's 5 below zero and the wind is blowing. They don't show up. You can't get somebody to fill in, and it's either me or my mechanics are out there pumping gas. It was absolutely horrible. But the thing that actually just in my head, which was the problem that pushed me over the edge, was and this was the end. I will tell you one thing that happened before that. I had one guy that worked for me, and granted, being robbed is an extremely scary thing to happen, especially when it's broad daylight. I wasn't there. I was out driving a customer's car. I come back to find the police there and everything. And it was not a good incident. Basically, what happened, broad daylight. My other mechanics were in the shop working. I had one other mechanic at that time in the shop. He was in the shop working. I drove the car. My gas attendant, somebody pulls into the gas station and says, can I use the bathroom? So the guy was dressed fairly nicely. He says, sure. He says, let me get your key for you. He goes and he gets him the key. He gives the guy the key. He says, over at the building, it's over on the side of the building. So the guy walks over there. He comes back. Now the guy's dressed in a suit, very, very nice dressed. He comes back and he says to the guy, he says to my gas attendant, he says, this key is the wrong key. He says, this for the ladies' room or the men's room? He said, no, it's for the men's room. He says, give me. He says, I'll show you. He walks around to the bathroom side of my shop. And the bathroom was on the side of the building, and it was like a divider on the side of the building to block anybody driving down the street from looking into the bathrooms when the door was open. So it was a private area back there. My guy walks in, puts the key in the door, turns the key. The guy puts a knife to his neck and says, if you say anything or do anything, he said, I'll cut your throat. He said, just give me the money and I'm out of here. So he took the money and he took off. That was one thing. That was when I said, this is getting to be horrible. And believe me, I could tell you a dozen more stories just like this here. I had a guy that worked for me 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Somebody pulls up in the gas station, pulls up outside, 7 o'clock in the morning. 8 o'clock in the morning, because we just opened up at 8 o'clock. Beats the daylights out of my guys to steal the opening money before we even pumped any gas. He beat the daylights out of my guy and robbed him, which was that's a very long story. If anybody wants to hear about it, you'll get a kick out of how that story turned out, how I got robbed. I mean, the guy who robbed me tried me because I pressed charges on him for beating the daylights out of my guy. It was a joke. It was absolutely a joke. But if you want to hear about it, you let me know. If you want to hear that story, I'll tell it. You know what? I'm going to tell it anyway. I'll tell you anyway. This is what happened. My guy is working. He comes into the place. He opens up. Now, Sunday mornings, there's one guy working. There was nobody else there. My guy comes in Sunday morning. He comes up and he goes inside the shop, unlocks the door, goes inside. Now, opening money back in those days was not a lot of money. It was $70. I used to have a couple of fives, a couple of singles, some change. It really wasn't a lot because you remember it was back 20 whatever years ago, 25 years ago, maybe something like that. So there wasn't a lot of money, but the guy pulls in, he beats the daylights out of my guy, leaves him on the floor, takes the money and takes off. He takes off. My guy sees the license plate number. He calls the police. Mrs. Jimthecarguy is coming in the door. Be ready. My dogs are going to go berserk. Ready? Wait there. Told you. Okay. So what happens, he beats the daylights out of my guy. My guy gets the license plate number of the vehicle, calls the police department. The police, they get the license plate. Maybe 15 minutes later, they got the guy. What happened is my place was on 53rd and Kennedy. And we used to have an area down we used to call the Woods. And it was Curry Woods, to be honest. That was the name of the place. And it was Curry's Wood. And it was a very big, I'm going to put this as delicately as I possibly can. A lot of undesirables lived in this very, very high, I'm thinking it's 12 or 15 stories. It's not even there any longer, but they were in there. The police go there, of course. They go and look, and sure enough, there's the car. The guy was in there buying some drugs. And one second, my dogs might go on again. I prepared everybody. They knew they were going to be barking. The police went there and they find this car there. When they're sitting there watching the car, and this guy comes out, and there's two guys come out of the building, and sure enough, they arrest both of them. I get a phone call now they get arrested. They take him down to the precinct, and they're going to process or do whatever they have to do. I get a phone call from the guy's wife who's driving the car. And he was driving the car. The passenger is the one that went in and robbed me. What happened is the woman who called was the wife of the guy driving the car. She said, if you don't drop the charges against my husband, I'm going to sue you. I said, why would you sue me? Your husband was driving the car. They beat the daylights out of my guy and robbed me. Long story short, after the whole process, you know how court takes forever to get to court, I get a letter from a lawyer that she is actually suing me. So I had to turn it over to my lawyer. Long story short, what happened is this fella was the driver of the car. He said he was driving down the boulevard Sunday morning, just minding his own business, of course. And as he's driving down the street, he saw a hitchhiker. And he picked up the hitchhiker, and the hitchhiker said, can you pull over here? I want to get a pack of cigarettes. So he said he had nothing. He didn't know anything about it. So that was his defense. As it turns out, long story short, after all of the court stuff that you have to go through, you know how long and drawn out this stuff can be, it turns out that he was an ex-policeman for the town. And the reason he was an ex-policeman is because he was affiliated with the known drug dealers in the town. And who do you think he was arrested with? One of the drug dealers that he was a known associate with. So did I get my money back? No. He wound up going to some kind of a rehab thing, and I got screwed by the system in plain English. Okay, that's the one. Now I'm going to tell you another story. This is the one that actually I decided that this is it. I'm going to go. I'm going to put the place up for sale, and I'm going to leave. I had a guy working for me, and my guys closed up at the end of the night. They would close up the shop, 10 o'clock. They would close up. They didn't have, back then, an alarm system was on my building. They didn't have the code for the alarm. The alarm used to turn on at like 10 after 11, quarter after 11, the alarm would turn on by itself. So my guys, even if they had the key for the building, they couldn't get back into the building because once they left, 15 minutes later, the alarm would turn on by itself. I get a phone call that the front window was broken and the alarm went off. It triggered the alarm, which then went to the alarm company, then the police station. I get a phone call that the station was robbed. So I go down there, and this is probably, 12, 1 o'clock, something like that. I don't even recall exactly what it was. But I go, and I go down to the shop, and I go down to the policeman I'm talking to. Sure enough, my window was probably 10, 12 feet tall, probably 4 feet wide. It was a $500 window back 25 years ago. It was a $500 window. It was a special window, But anyhow, that window cost me $500. What happens is that's not part of the story, but it was $500 for the window. But that's the window the guy decided to break to get into my shop. What happened is he busted the window, came in, and stole the opening money. Again, $70. That's how much the opening money was in there, and that's what they got. So this happened. The window got broken, and I'm standing there talking to the policeman, and this is like I said, 12, 1 o'clock, something like that. I get a phone call. My phone rings in my office. So who the heck is calling me now? I pick up the phone. I said, hello. He says, yeah, this is so-and-so. He says, I see the police are over at your place. He says, if you need anything, he says, now this is a kid that would work for me. He had just closed up that night. He had just closed up the shop. He says to me, yeah, he says, if you need anything, he says, I'm down at the diner, which is on 53rd and Broadway, which was actually 4 blocks, probably 3 or 4 blocks east of where my station was. So I said, all right, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the phone call. I appreciate it. I don't think anything of it. I hang up the phone. I'm talking to the policeman. And all of a sudden, about maybe 15 minutes later, a police car pulls up outside. The police girl comes in. She says to me, oh, Mr. Morales, I just want to let you know that we caught the guy who robbed your station. I said, get out of here. I said, how did you catch him so fast? I said, how did you know that? They said, when you picked up the phone there and you were talking to the guy, we picked up the extension line and we were listening to him. So we went down there and we talked to him. And he confessed that he broke your window. He needed money to buy drugs, and he broke your window to get in and get the $70 to steal the $70 from me to go and buy drugs. But that's the story that's the one that put me over the edge, where I said, you know what, That's it. I can't deal with this anymore. After being robbed 13 times, and now my own guys are robbing from me. Um, like I said, if you want to hear more of these stories, now it's popping into my head a lot more stories of other stuff that happened. About let's say I had a policeman's son working for me who robbed me. I had a preacher's son working for me who robbed me. I got a lot of. If you want to hear these stories, I don't want to bore you, but if you want to hear them, you send me an email and we'll talk about it. I'll give you some stories that you won't believe of the stories that went on, and they got away with it. All the times I got robbed, none of them ever did jail time. Every one of them, their defense was, "It's not my fault. I have a drug problem," and they've all wound up going to drug courts and all that kind of stuff. So that, if you want to hear more of them, let me know. I'll tell you some more of the stories about these events that happened. All right, that's the one. Oh, okay. Remember I said, Lon, thank you very much. I appreciate that. You like the stories? Okay, here's another one for you. This is about it. I'm going to tell you as many stories as you guys will put up with before you say, Jim, that's enough. No more stories. Then I'll stop. All right, this one was a good one. Remember I told you it was in the summertime, and this is the one where the guy robbed me twice. The same guy robbed me within a week. Not me, my attendant, my gas attendant. What happened is this is at night now. It's probably 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. It's a summer's night. It's probably 80, 85 degrees out there. It's pretty warm. It's a nice night. The doors are all open. People are all over the place. And what happened is my guy, we used to have T-shirts, and we used to have the name of the Exxon station on there, which was Murata's Bayview Exxon. That was the name of it. So anyhow, he's wearing a shirt, and he had a pocket up in here. And what happened is he had the money in his top pocket. And I always tell my guys, you don't keep the money in your pockets. When you have money, you drop it into the safe. It's a floor safe that nobody can get the money back out of. Well, so I thought, but if you'll remind me, I'll tell you a story about a preacher's kid that figured out how to get the money out of the safe without a key. You know what? We're going to tell that story next week. Let me just write myself a note, and we're going to talk about this one. You'll get a kick out of this one. All right. That story we'll talk about next week. It's the preacher's kid. You'll get a kick out of this one. Okay. What was I up to? Oh, okay. So my guy's got the money stuck in his pocket. And he's sitting down on the curb waiting for the cars to pull in to get gas. A guy pulls up and pulls a knife on him and says, "Give me the money." He says, "Or I'm going to cut you." So I always tell my guys, never, if somebody comes in and wants to steal a car, the money, equipment, never argue. Never argue. Give anybody anything they want. So my guy said, okay. He says, gives him the money, and the guy takes off. And that, I don't want nobody getting hurt working for me. And I can say that I've been in business now 42 years, 43 almost. Nobody who ever worked for me ever got hurt during a robbery. Granted, it's 13 times and nothing ever happened, but I always told my guys, they want a car, they want your money, they want your wallet, they want anything in the building, they want to take a customer's car, whatever, give it to them. There's no arguing with anybody. You don't know how desperate somebody is, just give it to them. So he gives them the money, and the guy takes off. They call the police. The police come down. I come down. We talk to the police, gives them a description. And they said, the guy just disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to him. He was just gone. So, and I see, I'm not reading over here, but I see that Joe's Auto Electric must be helping somebody, because I see codes with a question mark pop up. So thank you for doing that, Joe. I'm going to come up to some of this chat here in a little bit, because I think I've already talked about 40 minutes of this stuff here, and I know you guys are probably getting bored of it, but we're going to finish the story. So he disappears. Nobody knows where he is. They went around the neighborhood, couldn't find anything. So the police say, we'll keep an investigation going. We'll figure out what's going on with it. Well, we don't. So what happened is, about a week later, I get a phone call from my guy again. He said, "Hey, boss," he says, "you're not going to believe this." He says, "I got robbed again." I said, yeah. The guy, well, we used to call him Pickles. His name wasn't Pickles, but we used to call him Pickles. So I said, "No, come on, Pickles." I said, "What do you really want? What's going on?" He says, No. He says, "Really, we got robbed." But don't joke around like that. What do you need? He says, no. He says, we really did. I said, did you call the police already? He says, yeah, they're here right now. So I go back down over there and I said to him, what's going on? I said, what happened? He said, well, the same guy came in and robbed me. I said, get out of here. The size of the coconuts on this person to come back and rob you a second time. And sure enough, instead of having the money in the safe, he had it all stuck in his pocket. Well, the guy came in the second time, didn't ask for the money, grabbed his pocket and ripped his pocket off with the money and took off. So about maybe 15 minutes later, the police came in and they said, they said, we got the guy who robbed you the second time. I said, wow, so that was pretty quick. I said, how'd you catch him so quick? He said, to be honest with you, he said, it was just actually dumb luck. He said, what happened is the police car was coming down the street. The next street, my shop was on 53rd. The police car was coming down 52nd, heading to the boulevard. As he's coming down 52nd, they're driving down the street slowly. Somebody comes walking out of a house, and they come down the stairs, and they're walking down. And the policeman just looks at him, and the guy looks back, and the policeman just looks at him, just staring at him. The guy looks back a second time and takes off running. So the police figured something's going on with this guy. So they go and they talk to him. And long story short, what happened, the way he disappeared so quickly, my shop was on 53rd and Kennedy. He ran up 53rd in the backyard of his sister's house, which was I should say, let me rephrase that, ran up 53rd Street, cut through somebody's backyard, jumped over the fence into his sister's backyard, who lived around the corner, went into the house, took off the clothes that he was wearing when he robbed my guy, and put it down in the bottom of the hamper, along with the knife he used to rob my guy. So when the police caught him and they questioned him, he was singing like crazy. It's not my fault. I have a drug problem and all this kind of stuff. But that's the guy that robbed me twice and got away, I might add, too. He wound up doing some kind of rehab. I don't know what the outcome was, but the bottom line was I got screwed out of the money. And of course, insurance don't cover that because you have deductibles. But that was another story. Now when I'm thinking about this, I'm talking about it, there's a million other stories popping back into my head. So if you want to hear more stories, let me know, and I'll tell you some more stories about what happened back in the days. But we talked about the gas pumper who broke my window and stole the money. Okay, somebody else had asked me too about the gas shortage days. I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to go back into the gas station days, but we could talk about that next week. I will talk about this next week. Okay, we will talk about next week. We'll talk about that. I also got a couple of questions too about people wanting to know about the cars that I used to own years ago. Like I said, it's a little more involved than I'd like to. So we're not going to do anything with that tonight. We will come back to that because the two favorite cars I had. The first car I had was a '66 Oldsmobile. It was an F85 with a 330 4-barrel Rochester carburetor. That was my first car. That car was so beat to death that when you put the key in the ignition, that it wasn't even in the car. It was dangling out of the car. It was stolen, and somebody had ripped it out. Well, we'll get back to that. We'll talk about that next week as well. But somebody else had asked about the Mustangs I used to have, and the same person wanted to know about the Torinos that I used to have. So we will get back, and we'll talk about that next week as well. I did want to talk about that this week, but we'll do that next week too. Okay, so we will talk about that too, because we're gonna talk about another one too. Okay, you know what? We're gonna talk about it right now. This one is about a guy who used to work for me. You know what? We're gonna talk about this next week because it's gonna lead into a bunch of other stuff too. Okay, we'll talk about that next week as well. And the reason I say we'll talk about that next week is because this leads into this is about somebody who worked for me who got caught doing things he shouldn't do, and how the system worked. And I'm sure a lot of people know how the system works. If you know somebody, you can pretty much get away with just about anything. So we'll talk about that. We're going to talk next week about somebody who was a policeman's son that worked for me. And but we'll get into that next week. I did write a note. We'll talk about that if you want to. If you don't want to talk about it, just let me know. We won't talk about it. But we'll see how it. Okay, and we'll see how that goes. All right. Like I said, I know it's Mother's Day, so I just want to make sure any mothers out there watching, happy Mother's Day to everybody. This is my 10th live stream, so I do enjoy talking to everybody. But let's get back over here and let's see what everybody's talking about over here. I think I missed probably everything. Oh boy, I think I missed a lot of stuff here. I got a couple of pages of this. Okay. Oh, McGee 63. You do know the area. You're right. The Exxon on 53rd and JFK, it was turned into a few houses years ago. That's right. Actually, I was trying to buy that property from Exxon, and what happened is that property was contaminated. I did test borings in the ground, and when I did the test borings, it came up with a free-flowing product in the ground. It came up with lead, benzene, chromium, you name it, it was in the ground. My gas station was actually a gas station for not just what I had it, but it was actually, I think, 2 or 3 other gas stations there previously that they just actually knocked them down and left the tanks in the ground. But they did somehow, some way, they got the variance to actually put 3 two-family houses on that property. And then today it's 53rd and Kennedy. There's 3 two-family houses sitting on that property that was my gas station years ago. McGee 63, you know your area really well. Okay. Italy 52 said it was a Toyota. I'm glad you were able to get it done, and thanks again for that donation. Joe's taking care of somebody with a problem. Ed Burns says, isn't that where the Luke Oil station is now? No, it was actually on the other side. Ed Burns, you're not the Ed Burns that used to live in Bayonne and now lives in Florida by any chance, are you? Just a question. I'm just curious. But no, that the Luke Oil is actually on the, my gas station was on 53rd. My gas station was on the northeast corner. The Luke Oil is on the northwest corner. So it was directly across the street. I got to tell you a story about that one too. One day back in the day. We'll talk about that if you want to. But yeah, that Luke Oil is still there actually, but it's on the opposite side. Stanley wants to know what specific code reader. There's lots of different code readers out there, Stanley, and I think Lon is helping you with this too. And I'm sorry if it's already answered your question. I'm not sure, but if you go on to the Amazon, you can look up any of them, and a lot of them come with the adapter for the older vehicles. So there is quite a few of them. You know what? One second. I got these sent to me. Let me just see. I got a whole bunch of them actually. I'm gonna look through these later on. I don't know if any of these will work. I think these are all for the newer OBD. Okay, I got 4 of them that was sent to me. Okay, now none of them are for the older. It's only for the new OBD. I am going to do a giveaway because I don't really have a use for any of this stuff. So I will be doing a giveaway as soon as I find out the do's and don'ts of a giveaway. I will be doing a giveaway with those with any of the things that you see on my show. I don't really need them, so I am going to do a giveaway. So as soon as I figure out how to do it, I'll tell you the rules and regulations, and I'm going to do a giveaway to anybody who wants them. Joe is taking care of this. Joe says, I know who they are. Okay. Is your brother older or younger than you. No, he's younger than me, actually. Um, he's actually, I think he's like 3 years, 2 or 3 years younger than I am. And Lon, you're right. No self-service in Jersey. Nope. And Jessamine says, Bayonne, is that where you and Joe's are too? Yep, that's where we both are. He's at the one end of Bayonne, and I'm on the other end of Bayonne. Hi, Jim. I'm also an old mechanic. Hey, wait a minute. Who's an old mechanic? Can you talk about the old Pinto motors made from aluminum versus the cast iron used in some of the Ford Courier pickups that were much, thinking that's better, much better. The Pinto motors, yeah, the Pinto was one of the first ones that came out. The Pinto and there was the Vega. They were one of the first ones that came out with the aluminum engines. And back then, they used to have a lot of problems. The problems you used to have is that you had a steel head sitting on aluminum, or the other way around, an aluminum head sitting on a steel block. So what happens, it would sit on top of it, and when you overheated the engine, they would actually start to twist back and forth, and you blow head gaskets in them like crazy. I used to buy the Vegas and the Pintos. I used to buy them like crazy because nobody wanted to fix them. So I used to buy them as a project car, put it on the side, and change the head gaskets on them. I could tear them down with my eyes closed as well. But yeah, the problem I had is that the steel engine and the aluminum head, they would, once they heated up, they would distort at different rates. If you have aluminum and they both distort, they're moving kind of together. So you don't have any kind of twisting motion going on. But when you had the steel and you had the aluminum, and then it was on top, the aluminum would actually twist a little bit more, and it would wind up blowing out a head gasket. It was very, very common, very common. But yeah, that's when they first came out. And actually, what happened is, I think it was the Pinto or the Vega. I think it was the Vega actually that came out with the first thing that if you were short on oil, it would actually cause your car not to start. If you were short on oil, if you didn't have sufficient oil pressure, you couldn't start your car. It wouldn't start. I think that was the Vega actually. Joe's, well, yes, sir. We moved from downtown Jersey City a couple of years ago. I think about 3 years now, right, Joe? Let's see. The Pinto motors, after 100,000 miles, discard them. Gerald, you're right. But the Pintos, they usually never made it to 100,000 miles. You were lucky if you got anywhere between 50 and 75 and they would blow up. So they didn't really last that long. Oh, Robinson Auto. Very good. I'll tell Mrs. Jim the car guy that you said hello. Don't they use the Pinto 1.9 4-cylinder in the Escort too? It's possible they did. That motor was around for a long time, so it was in a lot of different cars. McGee 63 was a public housing project. You know who lives there? Wink. Yeah, there was a lot of troublemakers there. You know, when I stopped at that housing project, I stopped going there one day. I used to do road services down there, and I stopped doing road services there when I got out of my car to go into the building to get a car to get it started. And I got out of the car and I looked on the ground, and all I saw was needles all over the ground, laying everywhere. It was really a bad place. I had no business going there. Only at that point when I looked and I saw that on the ground, I said, you know, I can't do this anymore. And I stopped going down there. But yep, it was a really bad place. Joe's Oil. Okay. Drive Shaft Drew. Hello, welcome. I see you stopped in to say hello. Hope you're doing okay. I haven't talked to you in a long time. Everyone thumbs up and share the live show. Yeah, but anybody who can just mention to their friends to stop by and you know, make it a little bit more of the comments and more discussions, I'd appreciate it. Right now, we don't have a heck of a lot of people watching, and if you can mention it to your friends and anybody else, that'd be great. Okay. Big Dog 50001 says yes. More stories. Okay, I will. I will. I will give you some more stories. I made myself a couple of notes here, and you're going to get a kick out of these. We'll talk about some of the stories of people that worked for me years ago and what happened and all that kind of stuff. And believe it or not, the guy who robbed me back then, I caught up to him one time. I was down at my shop right now. He still was in the area, and I saw him coming down the street. And when he would ride past my shop, he would never look in. He would always look the other way. When I saw him coming down the street, and I walked outside, and I stood right in front of his truck, and I made him pull over so we could talk. But we'll talk about that for another time. Okay. Darlene says, hello, it's Darlene again. I have an issue with my son's 2010 Impala LS. I smell a burning type smell from time to time, and it seems after I turn off the car, I hear a bubbling, boiling sound. Okay, Joe, I think that you're taking care of this one for me. So, Darlene, I'm going to leave you with Joe, and he probably handled it with you already. But if not, you just let me know, and we'll talk about it a little bit further. William Nazaro, safe floors are easy. Safe floors are easy. Yeah, well, and I think I know what you're talking about here. We will talk about this too, because next week we're going to talk about this guy who actually got the money out of a safe that was down in the floor. But we'll talk about that tomorrow. But you're right, it did. I got robbed like that, so it wasn't that hard to do. Okay, I see Darlene as Joe was talking back and forth. Okay. Okay, I think we're gonna get a lot of other stuff going on here, and I'm just gonna. John Clark 1 says, "Love the stories. It makes the videos more interesting when you know about the guy making the great videos." Yeah, we will talk about more of this. We will. Just gonna go back here. I saw a couple other things up here. Okay, John A. Clark. Okay. Throw some steel sleeves and aluminum Vega engine, and it won't too bad. The full aluminum block was a bad idea. Yep, it sounded good in the drawing, but unfortunately, it didn't do so too good. Sorry, I'm just going back over here. I think I missed a lot of stuff. I will look through this after the live stream is finished, and we can talk about that. Okay. Oh, I see we have Wyatt here too. I see Wyatt stopped in. I don't know how long ago that was, but welcome, Wyatt. Good to see you here. I see Dry Chef Joe is here. John is here. We have a lot of guys here. Okay, so I do want to get to a couple of these questions that we actually I said I would talk about. I don't know if they're going to be watching at all, but this one comes from from somebody named Valerie. I'm not going to tell you her last name, but Valerie, if you're here, let me know. I'm watching my feed now, so if you're watching, just shoot me a text and let me know you're there. And if not, we're going to proceed anyway, and I'm going to read it. Okay, here we go. It says, "Hi, Jim. I just watched your video for replacing rear brakes on a Santa Fe, but I am having a tremendous difficulty. I cannot, and not is capitalized, get the rotor off. I've removed the screws and tried adjusting the parking brake adjuster, and it still won't budge, not even a little. I've hit it with some tools and nothing. Do I have to undo the hub? I tried undoing one side, but the hub nut was super tight and it kept spinning the rotor. So I threw the towel in for tonight. It's been metal to metal on one side for a few weeks, and I am desperate to get it done. Thanks in advance." And then down the bottom, it says, "P.S. I moved the screwdriver tip in the upward motion when adjusting. Okay, I think that's probably for the self-adjuster. Up or down is a little hard to tell because it depends on what side you're on, which direction you go, and they're all different, unfortunately. This question is what I do have for you. And Valerie, if you're there, just shoot me a message so I know you're watching. But what happens is those rotors, if you have the caliper off and you have the mounting bracket off, you should be able to take that rotor and spin it. If the rotor is turning, then we know that the parking brake shoes is not holding it on there, holding it tight. If you can spin the rotor by hand, it's not the parking brake shoes that's holding it. It could be an issue taking it off, but your problem most likely is in the very center where your axle comes through the back of the rotor itself. It builds up a tremendous amount of rust inside there. In that video, I think I may have showed you how to get in there with a pry bar and tap on it. But I will tell you, if that doesn't work for you, I got a video that I put up probably about a year, maybe more. If you watch this video, there is no drum, no rotor that will not come off. If you try it the way I did it in this video, you will absolutely get this rotor to pop off. I'm going to tell you how to do it, and then I'm going to tell you which video to go to actually see it done. Basically, what happens is you have the rotor is on the vehicle. You took off your mounting bracket on the back. The mounting bracket had the two bolts going through it. What we're going to do is we're going to use those two holes where the mounting bracket connected onto, and we're going to screw a bolt into that, a smaller bolt than the size of the hole. If the hole itself is, say, 14 millimeter, you're going to use a little bit smaller bolts, but you'll need smaller bolts to go through there. You're going to put the bolt, the hole is this big, you'll put the bolt through it, and on this end over here, you'll put a nut on that end of it. And then what you're going to do is you're going to tighten up this end of the nut, of the bolt, and they're going to hold the nut itself with a wrench. And when you tighten this in, that bolt is going to go up against the side of the mounting bracket, the ear of the mounting bracket. When it goes against that, as you turn this bolt in like this and turn it in, it's actually going to get to the point where that bolt is going to hit into the rotor. And by turning it, it's actually pushing the rotor off by itself. When it pops off, it's going to come flying off there. So make sure you put a lug nut on there, because when it does pop and come off, it's going to go flying across the room. So screw a lug nut on, 3 or 4 threads onto it. But that's how to do it. Now, if you just go on to YouTube, and when you're on YouTube, just type in how to remove a stuck rotor, or type in how to remove a rusty rotor. And then you look for the video done by me, Jimthecarguy. And it's not going to be a Santa Fe. It's actually going to be a Ford. I think it was an F series, like a 250 or a 350, that I was trying to get the rear rotors off of it. And anybody who knows these Fords, they know that these rotors, you can pound on them with a sledgehammer and you're not going to get them to move. And you'll see in that video how easily I got that rotor to pop off. So just go onto YouTube and type in there how to remove a stuck rotor or how to remove a rusty rotor. And then you just look for the video done by me, Jimthecarguy, and you'll see how it's done. All right, so Valerie, if you're not here, when you do get that rotor off, send me an email. I want to know how you did to get that off of there. You will absolutely get that rotor off. It's not a doubt in my mind. If you don't get that rotor off, send me an email with your phone number, and I'll give you a call and we'll talk about it. But we will get that rotor off. It is a big deal when you can't get it off, because you'll be pounding the heck out of it with a hammer to try to do it and you can't get it off. But if you can't get it off, send me your phone number. Just send it to me in an email. Don't put it up here on the live. I don't want nobody else having your phone number. Just send it to me, to my email, and I will call you. All right? Okay, so that's enough of that. Hopefully that helps out. We will come back to this chatter over here. I see there's a lot going on here today. And now we have another one here from David. He says, high. I watched a few of your videos, which were very useful, but I have a 2006 Infiniti FX45 that had a bad driver's side wheel bearing. Had it replaced. All went well till an hour later. The VDC off, slip, ABS, four-wheel drive lights all showed up on the dashboard. What could it be causing this? What could it possibly be that causes the light to appear? Need to reset it or bad parts? Unfortunately, David, it's going to be bad parts. As everybody knows, there's different qualities in parts. Nobody likes to pay $300 for a bearing when you look on some of these big box stores and you can buy a bearing on there and you can buy that bearing for 1/3 the cost of a good quality bearing. I'm not going to mention names, but there's a lot of good quality. You'll have well, there's a lot of them out there. Make sure you get a good quality. Don't go with the off-brand lower end stuff. Moog makes a very good bearing. Timken makes a very good bearing. You're going to pay a lot of money for them, but they're really good. In this particular case, I am 99.9999% sure that that bearing is no good. I'm assuming it was probably a lower end bearing because it's very common. When you put a lower end bearing on, this happens all the time. So to answer your question, all of those codes that you're getting in there is all caused by a failure of that bearing. But before you do anything, scan it and make sure if it's the left front bearing that you changed, make sure that you're coming up with, like the ABS is probably showing no rotation. Make sure it's the left bearing or whatever bearing you did. If you did the right, left, whatever it is, make sure it's showing up as a failure in that bearing before you say, yep, that's definitely the bearing, because it's possible, not probable, but possible that you may have done the right bearing and an hour later the left bearing failed. Like I said, it's not probable, but it's always possible. So, definitely find out where that code is and if it shows up in that wheel. If you don't have a scanner, you know that these big box stores, they all scan the cars today for nothing for you. So go there and get it scanned, or wherever you got the bearing from, if it's a local place. Then maybe they can scan it for you too. Okay. One more we're going to talk about here, and then we're going to get back to some of this talking going on over here now. This one comes to me from one of my subscribers, and is, hope I say this right, it's Jesnat. I thank you for replying to my previous email. I enjoy your videos and I am a subscriber. I am not mechanical, but I am a good study. I am a good studier. My question is, should I buy a scrap car to tear it down and replace the new parts to learn? I really want to learn, but don't want to spend the money on schools like Lincoln Tech. Now, let me just put this as delicately. I don't want to step on anybody's toes here, but these schools like Lincoln Tech, a lot of times they'll get you the basic stuff. You'll learn the basics there. Unfortunately, the only way you're really going to learn is by actually, hopefully, finding somebody who will take the time to teach you. I had a lot of guys over the years that worked for me that learned a lot of stuff about cars. And nobody went on to own their own shop, but they all made a fairly decent living working at this. Lincoln Tech is good to learn the basics. It's not cheap. It's very expensive. And you will learn the basics. And they do have some kind of a placement program, too, where they try to get you a job. If you could get your foot in the door with somebody who would take you in as an apprentice, that would be great. But the reality of it is that you're probably going to have a hard time finding a job any place that somebody's going to take the time to teach you how to fix cars. Guys that worked for me over the years, they already had to know what was going on before I would take them in and I would correct their mistakes. I've had people that went to Lincoln Tech. I'm going to tell you 3 different people that went to Lincoln Tech that were mechanics in my shop. The one guy lasted a week and I had to get rid of him because even though he knew what to do, his hands couldn't do what he knew in his head, and he wasn't able to do it. He caused me a big problem where he wound up parking a just common sense thing where he parked. He thought he was parking a car outside. He parked it on the outside of my gas station, locked the door, which he's supposed to do. The only problem was it was a stick, and he didn't put it into gear, and he didn't put the parking brake on. It rolled right down my driveway and crashed into a telephone pole, and wound up totaling the guy's car out. So the point I'm making is that even if you go to Lincoln Tech, is you still have to find somebody who's willing to take you on and teach you or refine all of the things that you'll need to know. Lincoln Tech or any of these schools will teach you the basics, but unfortunately, you're going to have to learn in the real world as well. So to buy a car and tear it down and learn how to do it, you could do that. I wouldn't go and buy new parts. If anything, you want to take things apart and play around with it to get familiar with it, you could. And watching these videos on here, there's a lot of guys, a lot of people on here who are my friends on here. You can look on my feed and you can see all my friends on here. If I can't help you out with a question, they can help you out with a question. Most of these guys on here are all very, actually anybody you see on my channel as a friend of mine, they're very knowledgeable and they will be able to help you out with any questions you have. All right. So to make a long story short, if you can afford to go to school, do it. If you can't, then you could buy a car and you can tear it down and learn how to take things apart and put things back together. But that's going to be a little difficult, especially if you don't have somebody hanging over your shoulder telling you, do this, do this, do this, do this. You know, it's a little bit difficult. But check it out on YouTube and you can see a lot of stuff going on there. And you got my email. You can always send me an email. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about anything. Okay, enough of page one. We have a lot of other stuff to go here on page two. We are going to get back over to some of the feed over here. I know I lost a lot on here. Let me go back and see what I can get up here. Oh boy, I think I lost a lot. I didn't realize I had so much going on here. Okay, I think I'm just going to scroll down to the end of the page here and we're going to pick it up someplace. Why are you saying hello to everybody? Manual says, is it possible for a car to run rich with no codes? Very unlikely. I'm sure somebody else has probably already talked to you about this on here. It's very unlikely. If you have a car that's running rich, usually it's going to set some kind of a code in there because something is definitely going on. And it depends on the year of the car too. If it's an older vehicle, then the data is much more limited. Okay, what year and kind? Okay, I see Gerald is talking to you about this. Gino says, what's your opinion of Mercury Marquis as far as durability in the long run? That the Mercury Marquis and the Crown Vic are practically bulletproof. Those things will run just about forever as long as you do your regular maintenance on it. That car is probably one of the best cars out there. And if you see over in the city or any of the car services that they have, a lot of them use the Grand Marquis, the Crown Vics, or even any of the cars that have that motor in them. They're very, very good as long as they're maintained. Very important is to do your maintenance. Okay. Oh, I see Joe's already answered that one already. Okay, we're going back here. I guess that John A. Clark 1 knows Wyatt. Wyatt's a pretty cool guy. I like him. Okay, let's see what you got there. Okay, I'm going to try that. Okay. Let me just see if I can get something here that we can talk about. Darlene is still talking to a couple of people about this. McGee63 says, I am watching Jim and the movie Scarface at the same time. That was a good movie. It's Al Pacino, right? I don't know. My favorite one is that Steve McQueen movie, Bullet. You probably know which one I'm talking about. All right. What do we got here? Another great shirt, Jim. Thank you very much, Joel. I think this is probably going to be one of my last, and I'm going to have to go back into the rotation again. I think I only have about 10, 11 of them, something like that. So we'll see how that goes. Joe's Auto says, I need one of those shirts too. I can just see you walking around the shop with that, Joe. I think your customers will think you lost your marbles. All right, John A. Clark. John A. Clark. I put a wheel bearing on a Nissan Altima after I had an ABS light. Scanned and had the code for the sensor. Drove the car, no speed from the wheel. I broke the sensor putting it on. Yeah, some of them, and you're right, John. Some of them, the sensor, a lot of them, the sensor is actually built into the bearing itself. Some of them, the bearing is on there, and the sensor actually protrudes through the knuckle. So when you're in the back and you're moving things around, you can break off that sensor there. But I know I've done it myself already, so it does happen. Okay, Super Jones 70. Jim, do you use the OEM scan tools like GM Tech 2? No, I don't. I know there's a couple of guys out there that's a very good friend of mine out there. He has a lot of the OEM tools for most of the cars out there today, but you're looking at a fortune in equipment. And in my shop, I don't do a lot of real heavy diagnostics. A lot of my stuff is just get them in and get them out. There's a couple other guys who do a lot of diagnostics, but I have so much work coming into the shop, I can't really afford to tie up on the diagnostic ends of it because the phones are driving me nuts or people coming in. Okay, John A. Clark 1 says, as Erico says, sometimes you got to slow down to go fast. Fortunately, only cost me $25 for being absent-mindedness. Well, it's true. I mean, it seems like whenever you're in a hurry to get something done, that's when you wind up with a problem. I remember doing a bearing one time where I actually used the OTC, the hub grappler, got the bearing all back together, put it all back together, and I couldn't get that snap ring in the top of it. That snap ring was just beat to death, and I had a big problem getting it back in. I wasted so much time flopping around with it. I should have just changed the ring to begin with. So you're right. So when I was pressing it, trying to get it to go in just a little bit more, I wound up destroying a bearing myself. So it happens. It does happen. I think what we got going on here. Sorry, I just touched this, and all of a sudden it popped all the way ahead. Joe's Oil Electric, all's good. Darlene, it's serious. I know, just couldn't help from asking. I'm laughing. So, okay, Darlene, I will go back and I see you had a lot of communications back and forth in there. I will go back into this and I will read through it and see what's going on with you. I know I think I helped you out with something else once before, but I will read through it and hopefully, Joe or Drive Shift you or some of the other guys helped you out with it. But I will take a look through. And if you still need to talk to me, Darlene, you do have my email. Send me an email and we can talk back and forth like that as well. William says, learned about buying a cheap motor mount 6 months later. I was replacing them with the name brand. Yeah, it's true. Nobody likes to spend the money, but the problem is that the off-brand stuff that they have out there today, it's it's just horrible. You buy something and you think you're saving a few bucks and it winds up costing you in the long run. So sometimes you're better off paying a little more and getting it done. I will tell you this, and I think I probably told you this already. I have customers that come into me all the time and I get a bearing that's a bad bearing. And I always give everybody the option. This is the price of the top of the line bearing. This is the price of the middle of the road bearing. And this is the price of the cheap bearing. And I can do any one of them. The labor is all the same on all three of them. The one bearing, the cheap bottom of the line bearing, has no warranty whatsoever. If I put that bearing in and it goes bad driving out the door, they'll pay a second time labor to have it done because I prefer not to use that bearing. The other two bearings, if I put them in and it fails, it is covered by a warranty and you're not going to have a problem. And 99% of them, except for that little 1%, they always go with the better one. But I did have one guy one time who decided not to and go with the cheaper bearing because he was getting rid of the car, which I've heard about a million times. But a couple of months later, he came back to me and the ABS light was on. I scanned it and the bearing was no good. And of course, the inside there, the sensor was built inside the bearing, so there is no fix for it. The bearing is no good. Throw it away and get a new one. But after the second time around, he did pay the labor a second time to have it done. He decided not to put the cheap bearing in. He paid to upgrade to a better bearing, and then I never saw it in for that again. So you're better off paying one time, and that's it. Okay, McGee 63. He's going to have something to say here. Says, what Jim is saying is school can't fix stupid. Well, yeah, it's true. None of us know it all. We all can make mistakes, for sure. Absolutely, Drew. Everybody makes mistakes. And when it seems like you make the mistake is when you're trying to save somebody money or trying to do something not 100%. You're trying to do it the least expensive way. That's usually when it comes back, and it usually bites you in the rear end. So it is true that everybody does make mistakes, and then sure enough, when you're trying to do something and you're trying to rush through it as well, you'll be rushing through to get the job done, and that's when you're going to make a mistake and cause a problem, or wind up one of these fingers. This one. This is the one I was actually in a hurry and I wasn't paying attention, and I wound up hitting a stud and wound up losing a fingernail. Thought I broke a digit, but just destroyed the fingernail. So no more. It grew out, so we're good as new again. It's only about the fifth or sixth one I did anyway. All right, let's see what we got going on down here. John A. Clark says, Scanner Danner doesn't edit out his mistakes. That's one thing I really like. We all make them, and it's good to learn from others' mistakes. It's true. I mean, everybody makes mistakes. And I remember having a discussion one time with one of my customers, and he was a very arrogant person. And I remember him coming into my shop, and my guy had done something, and he made a mistake. And one thing, if my guy made a mistake, I don't cover it up. I don't tell anybody that a story to make it seem like it wasn't. I said to the guy, I said, listen, my guy made a mistake. I said, he's not perfect. I said, but I will take care of it for you and everything will be 100%. And he was pushing and pushing and pushing. He kept on being really nasty to me. I says to him, I said, everybody makes mistakes. I said, that's why they put erasers on pencils, because everybody makes a mistake. He says to me, well, I don't make that kind of mistake. I said, well, you're the only person I ever met in my life who's absolutely perfect. So that was my story about erasers on pencils. Now you heard it. Actually, that guy there, I was so PO'd at him, I wound up throwing him out. I wouldn't even work on his car again. But that's far and few. Oh crap! Sorry, I just touched it and it went freaking a couple of pages jumped up. So sorry about that. TJ Hammer 3 says more stories. Okay, next. Oh wait a minute, I know this guy. I'm looking at that little tiny picture that's about the size of my nail, and I think they call it a thumbnail. And I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, that's either the Maverick or the Comet. I remember talking to you once before. but I can tell by the little picture of the blue, it looks like a Maverick or a Comet, I remember, I think. Joel McCoyne, I had no idea that Jim was having a live stream. That's what I get for not being around on Sunday. This is great. Joel, thank you. I appreciate you stopping by, but it'll be every Sunday, 7 o'clock. Well, last week last week I was actually running very late, and I wasn't going to do it until my phone started getting texts like crazy. It's like, where are you? Where are you? So I will be here every Sunday. Unless I know in advance that I won't be, then I'll let you know. But every Sunday, 7 o'clock, I'll be here, and I hope you guys come along too. Tell your friends, tell anybody who's subscribed to my channel to stop by. Okay, Joel says to what Jim was saying about YouTube text, I have learned almost everything I have needed on YouTube. There's a lot of and I'm going to back up from when I started, and a lot of other guys I know started too. There's a lot of people, and you'll see in my friends, we all got started for the same reason, because there was people on there doing stuff, and I'd look at on YouTube, and I'd look at these people doing something, and it's like, what the heck are they doing? You can't do that. If you do that, you're going to wind up killing yourself. You can't do stuff like that. So that's how I got involved with the YouTube thing, because there was such stupidity going on there with people who call themselves, so-called mechanics, that they that I started getting involved with it and going through it, and I started to realize that some of the people out there, some of the people are pretty decent. A lot of them are really like just trying to make a few bucks by giving you any kind of, just to keep you looking at their channel. So be aware of who you're talking to and who you're watching. Professional guys are always the guys you want to talk to or communicate with. You never want to talk to these other people. Jesunet says, will we get any fishing stories? I'm going to tell you this. I did replace the string on my fishing rod. I haven't gone out there yet fishing this year, but thank you. I haven't gone fishing yet this year, but I did put the string on both my freshwater and my saltwater rods. So we are gonna get out there, and maybe I'll even, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll even do a little bit of a fishing thing where I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I will do something with the fishing. But we'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll bring my camera. We'll do a little fishing from a boat or from the land out here in the ponds or in the ocean, or maybe even down Manasquan or Point Pleasant or something like that. We'll go. Joe's Auto says they think that I lost my marbles now. Well, Joe, I'm not going to argue with them. A lot of people are right. Maybe you did lose your marbles. After being in this business for as long as you and me, you got to be going a little bit off your rocker, right? Okay, and Wyatt says you need to retire so you have time to answer all the questions someday, right? Only can hope, Wyatt. Only can hope. Wyatt, I hope you're doing good. I never know where you are. You're always all over the place. I hope you're doing okay. Okay, Joe Maggie, question. I bought one of those fancy tension gauges when I replaced the alternator belt. Seems to me it's a bit too tight. How do I know? Those gauges, you really don't need the gauges. A lot of times they always try to sell you on these gauges. Usually when you put a belt on, you want to always make sure that belt is fairly tight. Pulleys today, or years ago, I'm going to draw you a little picture. I know this is going to be a lousy picture, but I'm going to draw it for you anyway. I don't make my living drawing pictures, but this will be close enough. Years ago, and it was hard to draw that, but this is how it was. Years ago, you had a belt that used to go from this point all the way around to this point. So all of this was the fan belt, and that belt would run on 3/4 of the pulley. Today, when you see a belt, you'll have a belt that'll go from here to here. It touches just that little bit of the pulley right there. So the belt needs to be extremely tight. Where you think a belt is going to be too tight, and you're going to cause a problem with one of the bearings or whatever, it does need to be extremely tight. What I normally do is if you tighten that belt up, you should be able to get maybe a 1/4 inch play back and forth on the belt. It will seem extremely tight, but you need to have it tight nowadays in order to keep the belts from squealing. I can't tell you how many cars come into my shop, especially the Hyundais, the Accents. The accents are always squealing because the belt only fits on maybe 20 or 30% of the pulley itself. So the belt does need to be extremely tight. Okay. Okay. We have here a 2000. This is Aswat 33 TS. I hope I'm saying that right. I don't think so, but ACSW 33 TS. IGM have a 2007 Honda Civic EX after following different guides on YouTube to change the rear caliper. I noticed the steering feels a bit looser. Also, parking e-brake feels looser. Okay. 2007 Honda Civic rear caliper. I noticed that the steering feels a bit looser. I don't think that the rear brakes are going to have anything to do with the steering itself. I think that may just be something that you're thinking feels a little bit looser, but it probably not. As far as the parking brake feeling looser, yes, it will. It will feel looser. When you change a rotor on there, the other rotor that you took off, the inside diameter may have been just a 64th of an inch thicker than the one that you're putting on there. So what you have to do is when you put that new rotor back on, before you put the caliper on, before you put the brake pads back on, you have to adjust the parking brake shoes inside that new rotor. You'll need to turn the little star wheel in there, and as you turn that star wheel, you'll feel the drums getting tighter. You need to have that drum tighter because what's happening is the brake shoes are on here like this. The drum or rotor is around the back of it. The shoes need to open up and come in contact with it. That's why it feels like it's lower. You need to actually adjust them so that they're out a little bit, so that they're actually touching into the drum. Just so you know, you need to tighten up that the parking brake adjustment. I do have a couple of videos out on that, and it was to do, how to adjust the parking brake. So if you just, go onto YouTube and just look at the rear brake rotors or adjusting rear brake parking shoes, you'll see how to do that. All right, it's getting pretty late, so I think we're going to be calling it a night. But I do have a couple of things we want to still do. I just want to read this a little bit here, and then we're gonna come back to that. Purple Sway says, I have a 2012 Kia Forte. I noticed initial startup idle is a bit higher than it was when I first got it. I'm at 88,000. Stays at 1,400 and park in 13 to 15 seconds. That's a little bit high, actually, before the idle drops down to 650. What I would do first, before you do anything, don't go crazy doing anything on there. Scan it first and see if you have any codes in there. You could have something going on with the idle speed motor. If there is an idle speed motor, you want to just first see if there's any kind of codes in there first, because if you have a vacuum leak or you have any cracks in the vacuum hoses and you have a very slight leak, that could cause it, because what happens when anything is cold, it kind of shrinks a little bit. And then when it heats up, it expands, and that can seal off the vacuum leak, so you may not have a problem. So definitely scan it first to see what codes are in there. You could have a vacuum leak someplace, and see where you go from there. All right? But scan it first before you go anywhere. Don't go changing parts until you know for sure if there's any other codes inside there. Very, very important. All right, I just touched this, and all of a sudden I skipped all the way forward here. I'm going to go down a little bit further. I'm going to skip past some of this stuff here. Oh, I see Mike stopped in. The disgruntled mechanic. Hey, Mike. See Wyatt's here. I got Joe here. I got a lot of good guys here. I got Gerald here. Got a lot of people here tonight. And then we have Bill Strauber says, Jim, would you agree that Dorman used to put out quality parts 40 years ago? Absolutely. Years ago, Dorman's products was a really good product. Unfortunately, today, the quality control, not just in Dorman's, but a lot of other companies, went right down the toilet. Okay, Jezanat says TDM, disgruntled mechanic, Joe's Oil, Jim's, South Main Auto, need to fix. Oh yeah. Okay, all right. I think we're gonna leave. I wanted to get to a couple of more questions, and let me just see if there's anybody here that I promised I was going to. Oh, this is the one I wanted to. This is what I had sent. One of my subscribers sent to me. I'm not going to read his name because it's a little bit embarrassing to him, not to me. It says, "Jim, my car won't start." That's the question. Okay, I just want to point this out to anybody. With anything, if a car doesn't start, there's no clean cut thing where I'm gonna pick up the phone and I'm gonna say to you, "Oh, it won't start? Well, change the chrome muffler bearings and that'll take care of your problem. It'll start right up." There is no such thing as a quick fix. Everything needs to be diagnosed. There's too many different places that can cause a problem. You can have an electrical problem. You can have a computer problem. You can have an ignition problem. You can have a timing chain or a timing belt. There's just so many different things. You can have multiple sensors failing. Too many things can cause a car not to start. So unfortunately, you will need to diagnose what's going on. If you just go to my channel and type in there, car cranks and don't start, and then look at some of my videos, it'll actually help you in a certain direction to try to isolate where the problem is, whether it's ignition, fuel, injection pulse, or whatever it is. We need to isolate where the problem lies. This is another one. I'm not going to mention any names because it's embarrassing, not to me, but to the subscriber. It says, "Hey, what's the part number for the front brakes?" I get this all the time from subscribers that ask me what's the part numbers. The problem is that I use a certain quality in parts. I use only top quality stuff. There's lots of other places out there that you can buy parts that are actually of a lower quality. So to give you the part numbers of certain items, if it's one of the big box stores, they may not sell what I actually buy because they deal with a lower end product. So to answer your question, I can't give you the part number because part numbers vary depending on the car, the make, the model, the size of the engine, the size of the wheels. There's too many different variables. So I can't give you a part number. The parts store needs to look up the part to give you to let you know. Okay. Oh, you know what? Let me just go back for a second. I just saw something here that I realized that I screwed up. Let me just go back and see. Let me find it first. Bear with me. This was in the very beginning. I'm sorry. Here we go. Wow. It's pretty far back. Okay, Midley 52. He sent me a donation. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that. Love your content. Thanks for what you do. And then I thought it was a Toyota that actually Midley 52 had. I'm sorry, I thought it was a Honda. And then he sent me a follow up, and it was not. It was a Toyota. Oh, he said he emailed me, or he sent me a chat, and he said it was a Toyota. I knew I talked to somebody about a Honda, and I just wanted to talk to. This was Hitch. It's this subscriber is called Hitchhiker, and it says, "Thanks, Jim. I knew it was a Honda too. Thanks, Jim. Took my car to Honda. They wanted $675 to do the front and rear brakes. I bought my brakes at Honda for $65 front and rear the same price, 2013 Honda, and they wanted $630 to both front and rear. It's unreal how much money they charge. I watched your video and did it myself. Thank you. Subscribe all day to the videos. You are the man. If I can send you a donation of some sort, I'll be happy to. Please keep doing Honda videos. Again, thank you and God bless. Please, everyone, support Jim the Car Guy." I knew it was a Honda. I talked to somebody about a Honda, and it was Hitchhiker. That's the username was Hitchhiker. Sorry about that. I thought that was you. So yeah, anybody who wants to send a donation, you just hit the dollar sign thing down at the bottom right there, and you can donate whatever you please. But I'd be more happy if you had your friends or whatever stop by and watch the show. All right, but donations are always nice. All right, I think I'm going to call it night. We have a couple of things here still that we need to talk about, but okay, we are going to talk about one more thing. This comes from another one of my subscribers, which I won't even tell you their name because it's a little bit of an insult to me. It says, I really hope you took your gloves off before you started the car. That would piss me off as a customer having oil inside the interior. I will tell you this. I've been in business for 42 years. I have never, ever, ever given a car back to a customer that had greasy fingerprints on the steering wheel, on the dashboard, on the window, on the frame of the outside, over the fender on the outside, or grease on the carpets. My cars would never leave my shop with any kind of grease on it. To me, if a car leaves the shop with greasy fingerprints on it, that's extremely unprofessional and that should never happen. And it never happened. 42 plus years in business, and nobody has ever come back to me and said, you left grease on my car. I will tell you this, I do sub out sometimes. I sub out cars and I get them back. And before I even give a car back to a customer, that car comes into my shop and I make sure that car is immaculate and there's no grease on anything when it leaves. Because you're right, some people are slobs and they do make a mess, but not in my shop. To me, this is very unprofessional. All right, I think we're going to call it a night here. We have a lot more going on. I do apologize. I didn't really have a chance to get back and talk to anybody. I see. I see Mike is breaking Joe's coconuts here. Okay. All right. Now we're going to have one more question here, and this is it for today, and then we're going to call it a night. All right. This is the question. I think last week we talked about, and I'm going to give everybody a couple of minutes to actually think about this. Remember last week we talked about, and it said, what did the olds designate 442 stand for? And I think it was somebody who came up with it pretty quickly. It was a 4-barrel carburetor, 4-speed transmission, and dual exhaust. And I'm pretty sure it was Joe from Joe's Auto Electric who came up with that first, because I remember now a friend of yours actually has that car, which I might add is a pretty nice looking car. I wonder if he wants to sell it. I have to talk to you about that, Joe. Okay, this is the question. What car was the first to place the horn button in the center of the steering wheel? Which car was the first car to place the horn button in the center of the steering wheel, not on the ends, but in the center of the steering wheel? Which car company was the first one? So we're going to let a couple of people try to figure it out, and I hope you don't want to Google and ask Google about it. But let's see, who can come up with it. All right. Okay, Lon says a Duesenberg. Good guess, but nope. McGee 63 says Volkswagen. Nope, that's not right either. Wow. Oh, you're gonna get a kick out of this one too. Okay, Mike, the disgruntled mechanic, says Tucker. No, all good guesses, but not right. Gerald says a 1940 Plymouth. No, that's not right either. It's a good looking car. Actually, I think I might even have one of them. Yeah, on my desk I have a lot of these older cars like this too. So I thought I might have had that one, but it looks pretty close. But that's not it though. Okay, McGee 63 says no. Uh-oh. And Joe Magny says, Scripple Booth Model C. Yep, that's it. That's it. I didn't even know what that car was until I just saw the picture of it over here. Joe says a Caddy, but Joe Mangy. Yeah, I never even heard of that car. But it does say this too. It says the car also was the first with the electric door latches. So, and that was in 1915, actually. That's just a little bit before my time, but it was in 1915. All right, let's see what we got here. Wow, that's a nice looking car. Actually, you know what? Wow. You know what? No. Yeah. Okay. I got one more for you. We're going to talk about one more thing here now. I'm only going to do that. I was only going to do one tonight, but we're going to actually do a second one now and the reason I say that is because I got to tell you a story about this. What U.S. production car had the quickest 0 to 60 miles per hour? What U.S. production car had the quickest 0 to 60 time? 0 to 60. Okay, let's see what we got here. What U.S. production car had the quickest 0 to 60 mile per hour time? Okay, what do we got here? Joe says, what year? It doesn't say here specifically, but I'm thinking it's got to be in the 60s. I think I probably gave it away because Joe, I think we talked about this car one time, Joe. That's what I will tell you that, and you're going to remember as soon as I tell you. Okay, Super Jones 70 says a Shelby. No, but I wish I had that Shelby though. It must be electric. Joe Magny says must be electric, but it doesn't specifically say here what year, but I'm thinking that they're talking about in the 60s. G. Jackson says Viper, and then we have Rambler, we have Ford. McGee 63 says a Stanley Steamer. Jesanat says a Tesla Roadster. All the newer cars today, yeah, definitely. But they must be talking about the older ones here. Porsche 918. Drew says a Porsche. Another one says a Shelby, a Spider. Gerald says a Porsche 1918 918 Spider. And John A. Clark says a Bugatti. You're right. That Bugatti is a monster. That car. That's a monster. Okay, enough. This doesn't actually. The question here, it should have said to me, what U.S. production car had the quickest 0 to 60 miles per hour in the 1960s? It doesn't say that, but that's what I'm going to throw in there. So let's see if anybody can come up with it now. In the 1960s. And then I'm going to tell you about this car. A friend of mine had this car. He owned this car, same color and everything that's in this picture. Okay, but that Bugatti that thing is an amazing car. I saw them put that car together one time. It was actually it comes as 3 pieces built in 3 different warehouses, and they put them together at one central location. Okay, Joe says a Hemi Cuda. Nope, close, but this car was actually faster than anything back then. It was a full drive shaft shoe says a Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt. And then it says this is a Super Jones 70, says a Chevy ZR1. Gerald says a Chevy Impala SS. And Gerald, you're right. It was the Chevy Impala. It was the 1962 Chevy Impala SS. It was a 409. And I will tell you this, that 409, that car was so fast back in the day that there was nobody who can catch it. You remember the Beach Boys song? It was the 409. But that car was a monster. A friend of mine bought that car brand new. When they bought that car, they came with the smaller engine, or they came with the 409. If you ordered the 409, you got the car minus the engine. It didn't have an engine in it. That engine was installed at the dealership. They had to install the engine. The friend of mine used to own this car. The one in the picture here is a red 62 Chevy Impala. It's an SS 409. And this car, in the picture, it's in mint condition. My buddy used to own this car, and to this day, that car is still in existence. He's been contacted by people all over who had bought the car and owned the car and wanted to meet up with him to get the original documentation for the car. But that car came to the dealership minus an engine, and they couldn't get the engine. The 409 was unavailable. And what happened is that they kept on telling this guy, here, we'll put this engine in the car. And he says, we'll get you on the road and you'll have the car. And he says, no. He says, I bought a 409 and I want a 409. And that sat in the dealership until he got his 409 and the dealer installed a 409 in that Chevy. And that's my 1962 Chevy Impala 409 story. And, it's good to see that car is still running, which reminds me, I got to call up that guy because I haven't seen him in a long time to see how he's doing. And then we're going to talk about, this one we're going to do next week because I see these cars come up on here and I used to own this car and I see, I probably just gave it away by telling you because you guys know what kind of cars I had back in the day. Not anymore, but back in the day I did. All right, I think we're going to call it a night. It's almost 9 o'clock. And, we started talking and just got carried away. If you want me to tell you more stories, I'm gonna pull out some more stories out of my hat, and we're gonna talk about some of the stuff that happened back in the day when I had these guys working for me at the gas stations and all of the stuff that went on and all of the headaches that I had back then. But we'll talk about that next week. And anybody has any other questions, or comments, or wants to talk about anything, don't forget, tell your friends to come on over and check it out. And we'll see how many people we can get watching. I don't know what my count was for tonight. Right now, we only have 40 something people here still. I guess everybody is ready to go. Okay. Okay, I'm going to read through some of this chat here, and we will talk next week. I just want to wish everybody out there a happy Mother's Day again, what's left of it. And as always, thanks for stopping by. And anything you want to talk about, you want me to change the format of it, I appreciate any feedback you give me. Everybody who donated tonight on my show, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the donations. Making videos and editing videos and stuff, for the money you make, you don't make a ton of money doing it. So it's nice to see when somebody appreciates what you do and they send you a couple of dollars. Whatever you send, it's always appreciated. It makes me feel like it's not you're not being rewarded or praised for what you do. All right, so I appreciate everything, and that's it. We'll talk next week. All right, so thanks for stopping by and spending the last almost 2 hours here listening to me talk. And that's it. We're going to call it a night. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Have a good night. See you next week. Remember, same time, same place, except next week we'll be here at exactly 7 o'clock. All right. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.